This is Ashton Marcus, and I'm on location at Broadwater Black Box for the opening of The Book That Won't Close, Confessions of a Love Addict. Hi, my name is Ashton Marcus. I'm with Broadway World, and I'm here with
T.L. Forsberg.
Great. Could I get either a brief bio of you, an introduction, or just anything you want to say?
I'm a deaf performer, and I'm an activist, and I have a show called The Book That Won't Close, Confessions of a Love Addict, that is about confronting your identity while going through a rehab for addiction.
And if my viewers decide to come by and see this piece, what should they expect to see?
They should expect to be educated about the deaf experience and understanding that deaf doesn't look one way. They should expect to see a lot of movement and signing and poetry that will communicate to their bodies, not just to their ears, and they will be cracked open by it.
You know, it's been my experience. I actually know a lot of disabled people. I'm involved in a lot of charities like that.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people are labeled their disability. Like if you're a blind person, you are blind, so you pretend to be the blind person. You know, the blind person. You're great at music. You stumble around here and there. You always ask for help. You know, if you do that, you'll get along. But you're not just your disability. You are actually a lot of things. You're the bullying that happens to you. Your parents look at you and really disappointed. They think, why did I work so hard? Why did I go to college? My life is worth nothing. And that lays all on the child. So you're more than just your disability. You are all of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I as an advocate, I always re-educate. Deaf people and the deaf culture don't perceive them to be a disability, so they kind of are in a separate camp. We think of ourselves as a language minority. But then when we need support from the disability camp, we'll go over there. So I'm just going to name that too, right? So I think that's one of the things that's happening is we're learning to live beyond the label. Like right now there's a movie Coda with all these deaf actors, and they're like, we're just actors who happen to be deaf. And I'm so excited to see people be a human first, and then not just relate to people at the level of their label. And let people decide for themselves, more importantly, I think, what they want to call themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed, again, you mentioned this piece is a lot about sex and all that. Again, I thought it was more about kind of parents. It was kind of more like therapy than anything else.
Yeah. Well, so love addiction and sex addiction are in the same 12-step program, and sex addicts tend to act out sexually, and love addicts tend to stay in relationships that aren't healthy for them because of abandonment. But abandonment is underneath both, which is why they're in one room. So underneath that abandonment is trauma. And so I went back into my childhood years to excavate that trauma. And so a big part of my message is that my living divided as a person who was part hearing and part deaf, that I wasn't a whole person. I had self-hatred and shame. So underneath every addiction is shame. So that was kind of how that ended up being told.
Yeah, I love the way you did that, because now it's not, you don't have to be disabled to understand this thing. You can actually just have a bad childhood, just be some kind of addiction, whether it's be, anal retentive, or whether it just be, because we all have addictions,
Yes, we do.
Right?
Yeah, well said. And the show to me feels a bit like a Rorschach painting that people will attach to what really matters to them. I always say the scaffolding of the show is addiction, but underneath it is really the story of deafness and her need to love and accept herself as a person who's not a typical form of deaf, but still feels she is deaf. And it's controversial in the deaf community. Like, a lot of people are like, well, you talk, so. And so I built that into the show. It's the first time in 11 years that I've been doing a show where I speak. I usually sign. So, yeah.
Yeah. Also, you as a person, as an actor, as an actor who is disabled, I've noticed you
I prefer diversely abled. Right, because disabled means less able, just so you know.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, but basically, again, you're highly successful, though. And again, you came from an era where that was very uncommon. It was like they hired actors and actresses, or actors who can play blind, who can play deaf.
Yes,
they didn't hire disabled actors.
Yes, you're right. And what I want to say is they don't hire the authentic form. They hire someone to act. It's a sticky location because actors have the right to play diverse roles, but then it does mean it's taking from that camp and not providing them with opportunities. So that's a big part of the movement right now, is to capture authentically for myself, because I'm hearing functioning and I hear well. It used to be they would pick me because it was easier to communicate with me because they don't need an interpreter. And now I'll go to an audition room and they'll say, oh, you're not really deaf because you speak. So now the discrimination is flipped the other direction. And I always say to them, it'd be better if you said, we're looking for this kind of deaf as opposed to real deaf. That's very discriminating. So I always just educate people about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then what are your tricks? I mean, how were you so successful in something like this? Because a lot of people haven't been.
Well, are you talking about the show specifically or dealing with my diversity?
Dealing with your diversity.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I am a coach, so I believe that this is my calling, and I think that art exists at going into the wound and coming out different. So, I toured music for 10, 15 years in the deaf culture, and I was their public figure role model for a long time as the deaf Lady Gaga, right? And then I got tired of that, and I needed to take a break and find it. But I think ultimately, this struggle, art exists in conflict. So I've taken any conflict of my life and I put it on the stage and I alchemize it for other people to feel it and grow. It's my calling.
Yeah. Also, I've seen some of your work, and I noticed some.
Seen before?
Some of your work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, I don't consider you a deaf actor. I consider you an actor.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the secret how you were so successful is you didn't consider yourself deaf. You just consider yourself an actor.
Right. And a lot of times when I audition for roles, I'll let them know that I wear hearing aids and that if they want to add signing into the role, that I have a community and a fan base who would be more inclined to watch it. And might be nice to have a little representation. And sometimes they go, oh, that's interesting. And then they will do that. And then my community will attack me from taking a role from them. It's this weird kind of place. So it's a process, trying to learn how to be with our own diversity. There's a lot of discrimination from within the community.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a wonderful piece. I loved it. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Appreciate you.
The Book That Won't Close, Confessions of a Love Addict, will be playing at Broadwater Black Box from August 5th to the 29th. For more information, go to www.hff21.co/6444.